Hi there, and welcome to One Body, One Life, proudly sponsored by Jamaise Fine Foods. I'm Vicki Nguyen, and I'm on a personal mission to live to 120, and I would absolutely love to take you on this journey with me. This show is focused on longevity and understanding how we can all live longer and stronger through diet, exercise, lifestyle, nutrition, and so on. Each episode, we will uncover tips and tricks to living your healthiest and happiest life for as long as physically possible. I'll be chatting to the experts as well as people who have defied the odds and explore various treatments and modalities to help us all reach optimal wellness. So in today's episode, I interview the one and only Dean Gladstone, who most people will know and recognise from Bondi Rescue. So Dean is not only a lifeguard, he's a former national gold medalist in swimming and surf lifesaving. He's also a qualified and practising personal trainer, Wim Hof instructor, yoga instructor and holistic health coach. Dean has a strong passion and awareness around the benefits of improving diet, hydration and nutrition, mindset and goal setting, mobility and movement. So today I'm super excited to welcome Dean to the show to discuss the power of the breath. Welcome to the show, Dean.
Thank you, Vicki.
How are you?
I'm good. It's an honour. It's funny listening to that intro. You know, it's as you get older, you sort of get across a couple of things, and that covers it pretty well.
That is you. That is awesome. So I have to tell you, I've actually got a 17-year-old son who's a massive fan, who was a massive fan of yours when Bondi Rescue, like back in the day when it was, you know, he was, I don't know, it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. And we actually took him to Bondi to try and grab a photo with you, but it must have been your day off that day. So we missed out and he settled for some photos with the other lifeguards instead. So, funny story. But this podcast basically is all about...
You know that old saying, if I had $1 for every photo...
I can imagine.
Wow.
So are you still on Bondi Rescue?
So, last year, in the last 15 months, I've taken a career break from lifeguarding to focus solely on health and fitness.
Awesome.
And in that time, I wanted to set myself a little goal that scared the pants off me.
Okay.
And that was to climb a mountain with Wim Hof in Poland in board shorts.
Amazing.
So that was sort of part of my breath journey and sort of part of where I am today. But, I wanted to set something that scared me.
Of course. Well, if that doesn't scare anyone, I don't know what else would. It's petrifying. I mean, just the thought of being at altitude and in the freezing cold. I guess that's one of the reasons why I want to talk to you today is because this podcast, One Body, One Life, is
super popular, this Wim Hof stuff and this focus on breath at the moment. And it's, it's something I've been aware of for a very long time. And it's amazing to see everyone connecting with it.
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, breath is life, right? So
that's right.
And this podcast is all about helping promote longevity. But I guess that in your job, when you were lifeguarding, it was literally about saving people's lives and sometimes even bringing them back to life.
Yeah, it certainly was and is. And, you know, as a lifeguard and even as a health coach now, I feel like I'm sort of helping people's lives and saving their lives just in a different way. But I look forward to be doing a little bit of lifeguarding this summer back on the beach. And, amazingly, like Bondi Rescue, could be going again for season 15, which is scary. You should see how young I look in the first year.
You're still young. It's all the breath work that you're doing, keeping you looking youthful.
That's
I'm
right.
sure. So obviously,
I keep the young guys on their toes at work. Actually,
I'm sure you
always
do.
Give them a little touch up in the fitness test. Me and Harry's one of the other elder statesmen. We sort of. We like to play hard.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So obviously, I mean, as a lifeguard, you would have probably lost count of how many times you've resuscitated someone.
It'd be somewhere between 15 to 20, Vicki. If I sat down with a couple of the guys and we sort of nutted them out and wrote them down, I definitely remember them all.
Yeah.
It is a crazy rush. There is nothing like it in this world.
Well, you're seeing someone on the precipice, right? It's in such a vulnerable situation. So obviously breath is life. And
breath is life and, you know, giving people mouth to mouth. I remember giving a a guy mouth to mouth who was very drunk one day.
Oh, God.
Who had drowned in the surf, and I literally pulled him out by the hair. And
Wow.
yeah, you know, most of the mouth to mouth I've done is we use masks wherever possible.
Yes.
But there has been a few occasions where I've literally had to do the old mouth to mouth, and
Goodness.
yeah, I was there once he was all right. I was very angry with him.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But very pleased at the same time.
Yeah, well,
that he was alive for me to be
it's
angry at him.
completely irresponsible. I mean, obviously, personal safety is the most important thing in ensuring one's longevity, right?
Yeah, and that's a rare occasion that I do get angry at people, because I do appreciate my job is to help people. And actually, Vicky, that's one of the things I am really grateful for as I reflect on my years of lifeguarding. You know, I started doing it to work on the beach and in the sun, and because I thought it was cool.
Yes.
And then as I got into it a little bit further, I realised that this giving back had a little bit more to it, and the ability to help people is just a beautiful thing. So it's pretty privileged to do that then, and still do that now in my breath coaching, my teaching yoga, my personal training, all what I do is all helping people. So, I feel pretty blessed.
You are. It's such a privilege to be in that situation where you can give back and teach people. So obviously, I mean, with Wim Hof, is that something that's a new thing for you?
Yeah, a bit of a long story. It's sort of come across in a couple of ways, but I had a pretty nasty accident in Bali in 2014 where one of my toes was actually ripped off.
Oh, nasty.
I don't know if you want me to send you the photo for the the show notes.
Yes, send it.
But I certainly can do that. They're quite graphic, so please be warned in advance.
Wow.
And it looked like what my pinky toe wasn't going to survive.
Goodness.
So I was in a third world country basically doing some research on the internet, and I ended up finding some pretty good research on cold therapy or cold thermogenesis from Dr. Jack Cruz.
Right. And
I started ice bathing. I hadn't heard of Wim at this stage, and I didn't really like it, but I knew it was good for me. Through a combination of meditation and all sorts of health practices that I include in my life, my toe survived.
Wow. So you had to basically immerse the toe in freezing cold?
No, I didn't put the toe in. I had the rest of my body in and my foot out.
Wow.
But the anti-inflammatory effects of the cold water or ice water are really well known, and I believe that played a big part in my recovery.
Amazing. What a story.
Yeah.
And that's what led you to Wim Hof?
Well, it's sort of, I think it come around in a couple of ways. It come across my, my health podcast that I was listening to. I think Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan and Dave Asprey, and it just kept popping up. And I used to have really cold hands in the winter. I used to get a little bit embarrassed when I'd shake someone's hand.
Yes.
And, I started, doing some research, and this stuff started coming up. And, Wim has control over his body and his vascular system that other people just don't realise they have or don't have through lack of training. So, I was surprised and impressed and that this was trainable, and I wanted to do it.
Amazing.
So I did it. I bought his 10-week course and just started doing it, and I loved it.
It's incredible. And so tell us about, I mean, obviously you're a yogi as well, and I taught yoga as well for 15 years. So how different is the deep breathing that you practice, or the Wim Hof method, compared to like yoga pranayama?
It's very different.
Very different, okay.
Very different. It's hyperventilation. Hyper means fast or high or big.
Right.
So it's a hyperventilation. Wim teaches, he's not so fast. He will teach you to breathe through the mouth. Wim instructors sort of now teach to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Right.
But Wim says any hole, just breathe. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
I won't say exactly. Wim just says, breathe, motherfucker. He's like, he gets people literally high. Just so you can get more oxygen breathing in through the mouth. But as a yoga teacher, I like to instruct people to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, some of the yogis I teach it to find it a little bit aggressive.
Yeah, right.
And then others just absolutely love it.
Well, I guess it's probably similar because I taught prenatal yoga for a long time as well. And I remember teaching the ladies that if, when it comes to the pushing, if you have to breathe in through your mouth, or if you have to, because with yoga, it's about breathing in into the belly, and like a baby breathes, it's that belly breath. But obviously, we lose that. A lot of people forget how to breathe correctly. And I remember teaching with prenatal yoga, we just used to say to some of the ladies, just breathe however you can. Basically, if you're in that moment and you can't, you lose track of how to control the breath, well, you just got to breathe. And if it means that you're breathing in through the mouth or breathing out through the mouth and not the nose, then I guess you've just got to go with that, don't you?
Yeah, well, in my recent studies, I did a pranayama teacher training not so long ago with Dr. Gaurav Malik. He's an Indian, I'm going to call him a guru.
Yeah.
And, he studied yoga through university and has, 15 years and his own yoga school. And, there was a lot of mouth breathing in these different pranayama techniques.
Yes.
And it was, sort of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah,
and,
it kind of goes against what we're
he
taught.
explained, as I knew, you can release emotion through the mouth.
Yeah, right.
You can laugh. You can do all these things through the mouth that you can't do through the nose.
Yes.
So it opened a little bit of the Wim stuff back up to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And with the Wim Hof stuff and other different types of yoga breathing, you would have heard of trauma release. And,
yes, absolutely.
And when we're releasing through the mouth, it gives us an opportunity to,
really
we did that lion's breath in yoga, and you feel that release, that tension go, and that's quite often exhaling through the mouth.
Yes. Yep, exactly. That's what I used to say to the pregnant ladies. Like, if you need to let out a swear word,
let it out.
Release through the mouth as you're exhaling. Do what you got to do. So that's interesting.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Out.
Let it all out. Exactly. So if we look at the animal kingdom and we look at the animals that live the longest, it's obviously the ones that move the slowest and breathe the slowest and eat the slowest. And when you look at creatures that have shorter lifespans, like rodents, for example, they move fast, they breathe fast, they eat fast, everything's fast. And obviously as humans, it's about finding that, I guess, happy medium or working with, everybody's different, obviously. But what, in your experience, how has the deep breathing or even what you do, like what you were taught with the Wim Hof, how has that helped you with your exercise pursuits?
It's, I have a lot of experience. I've been sort of studying and training people on and off for years, so I knew it all this stuff intuitively.
Yes.
But in the last couple of years, I feel that everything is now or wants to be science-based. All the exercise is evidence-based, and everyone's quoting scientific studies. And if there's not a scientific study behind it, it's
not worth
people
anything.
don't seem to take it seriously, which I find a little bit frustrating.
Yes.
But, so I never used to worry too much about it. I used to intuitively know if it was good for me or not.
Yes.
And I used to do it. But, these days there's a bit more science behind it. But intuitively, I always knew as a lifeguard, remaining cool, calm and collected enabled me to act and perform better.
Yes.
And now, it's almost common knowledge, people talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems where we're going into fight or flight in that sympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
Where digestion switches off and we vasodilate so we can breathe better and we can run faster and we can do all that stuff. And sort of controlling those mental states and keeping my breath down to remain calm, to literally, we talked about it earlier, save someone's life or bring someone back to life.
Absolutely.
It's important not to panic and being able to think clearly and breathe in those situations. And, even when I take someone into the ice, instantly I see their breath go.
Yes.
And I know they're either going to jump out or I've got to hold them down and get those shoulders away from their neck and get them to breathe a little bit deeper and slower.
Wow.
So, there's a lot to be said for
breathing.
Deep slow and steady.
Slow and steady wins the race, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, obviously there's been some research on oxygen helping keep us youthful, with oxygen therapy and hyperbaric chambers and all that, and also with killing cancer cells. Do you know much about that?
One of the recent courses I did was called The Oxygen Advantage with Patrick McEwen.
Right.
And Patrick was an asthmatic as a child, and so was I.
Right.
So, I sort of...
I remember reading that about you.
I was always connected to as a child is where my parents, they used to take me swimming, which is possibly how I ended up as a lifeguard.
Yes.
And whenever I stopped swimming, my asthma would get worse.
Right.
And my ability to do all other sports would suffer. So I always,
wow.
I always used to stop doing swimming and then, end up coming back to it and eventually developed a love for it because it gave me this basis. And again, I sort of start to understand with science now this intermittent hypoxic training, hypoxic meaning low oxygen, is sort of when we improve our body's ability to buffer the carbon dioxide in the body, which improves our ability to exercise. As an athlete, if you want to run or swim, when we can't break carbon dioxide down in the body, it turns to lactic acid and forces us to stop. It's this breathing slowly and not having too much oxygen in the blood, which releases the carbon dioxide through the lungs.
Right.
So but as we know, we train hard, we get our heart rate up, so eventually it goes down. So similar to the Wim Hof method, sometimes we load up our body with lots of oxygen, so it can use less later.
Yes, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I know there's some places that do the altitude training as well to increase I guess it's about retraining the lungs, really, isn't it?
Yeah, retrains the lungs, and it teaches us to use less oxygen and carry more carbon dioxide. So in Patrick McEwen's work in The Oxygen Advantage, he sort of thinks people see carbon dioxide as a waste gas.
Yeah, right.
But carbon dioxide actually gives us the inclination to breathe. And I know that during the Wim Hof, when we do the Wim Hof breathing exercise, and people actually pass out because they breathe out a lot of CO2. Right. CO2 gets really low in the body. So it's the CO2. That's why it's very important, for people that are practicing the Wim Hof method and they haven't been taught properly, that they do it sort of in a very controlled place. There was people doing it in cars and in the showers, and there's people that do die from shallow water blackout. And it's that lack of carbon dioxide build-up in the blood, and people just pass out. Now, this is very safe if you're lying down, but if you're underwater or driving a car, it can be turn out awful.
Interesting. It's interesting you say that, because I remember about how you were saying, I mean, obviously carbon dioxide it stimulates you to breathe. It triggers something in the body, right? So when I had my children, so a long time ago now, so I've got a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, but we use the co-sleeping. We use attachment parenting technique, and our baby slept with us. And I remember doing research on, SIDS and all of that, and there was some research on if you sleep with your baby, there's less chance of that, because when you're exhaling, that actually stimulates your baby to breathe. Because you're...
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so it was an interesting fact. But, so what about people who smoke or have smoked? I mean, obviously their lungs are compromised in some way. Can the lungs... I don't know that the lungs can be repaired as such, but can they be taught to breathe deeply? And have they got that capacity that people who haven't smoked?
Recently I had a guy come to one of my courses.
Right.
And he only had one lung. And he had been in and out of the medical system for 10 years.
Right.
And no one had ever taught him to breathe properly.
Wow.
And obviously he had discovered this Wim Hof stuff, and I think that's how he ended up at one of my courses. But he was amazed to go through some diaphragmatic breathing to sort of get some lateral expansion of the rib cage.
Yeah. And
he did really well. Like, his breath retentions were amazing. It was unnoticeable to me, apart from, my discussions with him, that he was in hospital with lung disease for a long time and only had sort of half the lung capacity. So he's a great example of someone, that can improve their lung capacity.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, I remember even like teaching beginners how to breathe in a yoga class, and most people would do the whole chest rising breath. They breathe into their chest and lift the chest up, and it's like, how do we lose that? What happens? Like, it's almost like they need to teach it at schools how to breathe properly. back
Yeah,
into
that's right. Well, they do.
back into the belly and teach people about the whole anatomy of the lungs and the diaphragm and the function of the diaphragm in pulling down to help the lungs suck in the air, and then as it retracts back up, it helps you exhale, kind of thing. But how do you think, with our lifestyle that most people live and our diets and our minds, how does that all impact the breath?
Well, yeah, it's back to that stress response. When we get stressed, and people are more and more stressed, and all stress isn't bad, as you know, but when we get stressed, we breathe into the upper areas of the lungs, and that can be a mouth breath is more linked to the upper area of the lungs. When we breathe through the nose, it's more linked to the diaphragm and the lower area of the lungs. And that's where we have more oxygen in those lower lobes, just because of gravity. So it's like this vicious cycle, I guess. We get stressed from sometimes seeing something on social media or an email or a phone call or driving the car. And, we switch on that fight or flight response. And, that switches off digestion. It makes us more alert. There's, there's all these blue lights that people are watching later in night and, sort of staying up late. And again, they're sort of getting stressed and they're not sleeping well. There's no recovery. So, it's this vicious cycle of coming in and out of this fight or flight response and, not doing the opposite, not activating the parasympathetic nervous system where we're sort of laying down and breathing with our belly and letting our food digest and, getting into deeper states of sleep and getting to recover. So, there's so many reasons why people are stressed these days, but, sort of phones and access and lights and 24 hours and shift work and,
exactly.
Having young kids.
Yeah, and just being on all the time. I think people are on all the time. Yeah.
And I know myself, I'm constantly on and doing stuff and preparing and studying and, it's a real challenge to switch off, particularly because I enjoy what I do, but I always feel like there's something to do on managing websites and creating content on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and it just doesn't stop.
It's the life we live,
but,
isn't it, Dean?
And I love it, but finding the balance, like everything, we need to bring balance into it.
It's so elusive. I'm the same as you. I absolutely love what I do as well, but my life is pretty itinerant. I travel a lot as well. But recently I found, a couple of weeks ago, I was waking up in the morning with heart palpitations, which I have never experienced in my life. And the first thing I noticed was that, my heart was racing and my breath was so shallow. And I'm just so grateful for having understood, the whole mind-body response to stress. And I came straight to my yogic breathing and started trying to control it. But, I just think about people who don't have that knowledge. And, I'd love you to share. For people who are listening, I guess it's important to understand the anatomy of the lungs. And if you think about there's 3 lobes, is that right? 3 lobes on the right side and 2 lobes on the left, and there's only 2 lobes on the left side to accommodate the heart.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the heart takes up a little bit of space on that left-hand side of the lungs, but the diaphragm sort of sits underneath the lungs, and that separates the thoracic cavity from our belly.
Yes.
Or abdominal cavity, if we want to get a bit more anatomical. Anatomical.
Right. So in that case, have you got a quick breath that people can do if they do suffer anxiety or heart palpitations or any type of stress situation that they might be in? Is there a quick little breath that you could teach us or teach people to do so that they could help control that?
Vicky, so it's different horses for different courses, so different things work for different people. But I really like to get people, for people that aren't breathing diaphragmatically or don't even know what that is. And it's tricky. So the best way, and this is what I learned in yoga, actually. This is not a Wim Hof technique. It's called the full yogic breath in yoga, and something you probably learned or did yourself. And I just get them laying down, usually knees bent or maybe a bolster or a pillow under their knees, and that just keeps the hips in a nice position so they don't pull the diaphragm out. And I get them to put both hands on their belly, and so they get that feedback, and I just get them to close their eyes and close their mouth and breathe in through the nose. And when we breathe in, we want that belly to expand laterally to the side and downways. So we're not just pushing the stomach out, although that is, we talked about that beautiful, watching a baby breathe, watching that beautiful belly breath that they do. But yeah, getting some lateral expansion.
Similar to when you blow into a balloon, it expands evenly, front, sides and back, right? So, and what about, I remember also learning about at different times of the day that would either breathe through the left or the right nostril or both, depending on, was it the moon or the tide, or is that correct?
Yeah, so the moon does affect the ocean.
Right.
The tide, as a lifeguard, I can tell you that the tides are very much affected by the moon. And the females may be more aware of the moon and their bodies than males.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so as a male, I don't feel the effects of the full moon as much as a female, but who knows? There may be some males that do. But yeah, the gravitational pull of the moon, as our bodies are sort of 70% water or something around that figure, it can affect our body more so than others. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of the nose blocking up, it's quite interesting that our nose will block differently at different times. And again, in this most recent sort of course that I did, the Oxygen Advantage, there's some really nice exercises to help clear the nasal passage. And it just involves sort of breathing in and out through the nose and letting a little gas called nitric oxide build up. And nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It means it opens up the airway. So for people at night, this is a really handy exercise to do. Because, for anyone that's ever had a cold and had to breathe through their nose or breathe through their mouth all night, it's not the best night's sleep. You wake up really dry, and there's not as much rebuilding and repair work done at night.
Okay, so how do you do
nasal
that?
breathing is huge. So you breathe in through the nose, out through the nose, and you block your nose.
Yes.
And then you count to about 5 or 10, and it's really important to take the next breath in through the nose.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know. Is one of your nostrils blocked at the moment? Check them for me.
No. Hang on, I'll check for you.
No, they're both...
No, they're both open.
Both open. Oh, well, it's not going to work. But, yeah, 5 or 6 times of doing this, and it generally always improves people's airways. Patrick McEwen, the author of the Oxygen Advantage, he reckons he's treated 6,000 or 7,000 people, and in that time there's only sort of 10 to 15 that he's had to refer on to an ENT, an ear, nose and throat doctor for surgery. Nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide. So, what about with Nadi Shodhana, the alternate nostril breath? That's kind of, I guess that opens up both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely probably some of the exercise that we just talked about in Nadi Shodhana, because you're breathing in through one nostril and out through the other, and then back in. In pranayama, there's sort of holding the bandhas and holding the breath. There's another alternate nostril breathing called anuloma viloma, which is more of a prep for pranayama, where you've sort of done the starter class, where there's less breath holds and we're breathing in one nose and out the other. And again, yeah, great exercises, love them. Sets a balanced body and mind, and different sides of the airways. I really love doing a bit of alternate nostril breathing into Kapalabhati. That is sort of my new little favourite at the moment. I know I did it this morning.
Nice.
And it would just really, I feel it really just settles me down. And in the Kapalabhati at the end, there's a breath hold in it.
Yeah,
so
right.
the body goes a little bit hypoxic.
Yeah.
And then, there's a little element of, I feel there's a little element of or influence from the Wim Hof method. So because I practiced Wim Hof method every day for years, and something I still love to practice, but I do love exploring and playing a little bit with different other techniques at the moment.
So tell us about what the practice that you partake in.
Yeah, I became interested in the Wim Hof method. I bought the online course. I realised, as a yoga teacher, that I started doing yoga because I had tight hamstrings and couldn't touch my toes.
Yes.
But it was the breath that actually sort of kept me coming back to yoga.
Right.
And it was the Wim Hof method is, there's 3 pillars for the Wim Hof method, the breathing component, the cold therapy component, which I'd already explored when my toes got ripped off.
Yes.
And the breathing method makes it easier to do the cold component. So I think I remember doing some of this prenatal yoga with my wife at the time.
Yes.
We held some ice cubes.
Yes.
And then we did some breathing exercises while we were holding ice cubes, and we sort of noticed the difference. I don't know if that was ever one of the ones that you did or you taught, but I do remember doing that. So, when we breathe deeply, we switch off the pain receptors or relax the pain receptors in our body, and that enables us to get into the cold much easier than if we were just to jump in the cold alone.
Interesting.
Without doing some breath work to prepare.
Well, I guess it's similar to opposite though. The fire walking, similar thing, right? It's like controlling
same thing.
The mind and the breath. So what are the 3 pillars? So it's the breathing, the ice, and
it's like a willpower, determination, commitment.
Awesome.
So having the commitment to do the first 2 is actually doing all 3 really, because some days you can't be asked, and it's forcing yourself to do it, and not forcing yourself, but having the motivation to do it, and then other days it's a little bit easier.
And what about the Wim Hof meditation technique?
So after the breath work, you become quite high and relaxed. There's a lot of extra prana in the body. There's lots of chi. There's lots of different chemical reactions, and although there is a lot of awesome science behind the Wim Hof method, I don't think we can explain it all.
Yeah, right.
Something magical happens, and you become quite. And it happens quite quickly. So people that meditate, it can take them years to get this experience, this glow, this feeling where they're in meditation. But people doing the Wim Hof method seem to get there, in sort of 10 or 15 minutes. So the results are rather immediate. I've had sort of meditation gurus come and do my courses, and they say it feels like they've been meditating all weekend.
Amazing.
They're quite amazed how quickly they can access that part of the mind.
Yeah, right.
I think meditation opens the blood flow to the sort of creative part of the brain, like that prefrontal cortex, where we're more creative and we use our imagination, and where all the magic happens, basically.
Amazing. Well, it's so important, isn't it? Because, the mind is so cluttered. I remember, even you've got to clear out, make way. You've got to let go of things that are no longer serving you mentally to allow space for creativity, don't you? And that's where meditation is so vital.
Yeah, that is the goal of meditation, right? To sort of clear way for the magic to happen.
Exactly.
Exactly. And it's tricky. It's hard, isn't it? Because we're so focused on doing stuff, and in meditation we're sort of trying to do something so other stuff will happen, but you can't will it to happen. You sort of got to meditate with less intensity.
Yes, exactly. So what practices do you partake in to assist with your longevity plan?
Oh, Vicky, I do a little bit of everything.
Good. I want to know what you do.
I'm super passionate about organic food.
Yes.
And, whole foods. Quite interested to see. Have you heard much about the carnivore diet?
Yes. So is it similar to the O-type? O-type diet?
No, the carnivore diet there's a doctor in the US, Dr. Shawn Baker, where he eats just meat, just red meat.
Okay.
And so he started doing it as an experiment.
Yes.
And he took all his bloods, and everything improved.
Wow.
So he started doing it a couple of years ago for a month as a bit of a joke, and he took all his bloods and all his markers, and he did all this stuff, and everything improved in the month.
It's taking caveman diet to the next level, isn't it?
And I'm not advocating this diet or suggesting people will do it, but I see people on a very other end of the spectrum on vegan diets as well doing really well. So somewhere in this whole food diet, I think there is magic. So it's just sort of cutting out processed food and doing well. I love a bit of gratitude practice, particularly when I get down or depressed or frustrated. The simple practice of jotting down what I'm grateful for. I teach yoga. I love to lift weights. I love to get in the ocean, in nature. I love spending time with family and friends. Ball sports, playing tennis with my mates is also fun. What don't I do to influence my health is maybe a better question, because I guess, it's always in the background of my mind. Yeah, I had some health issues many years ago where I lost my health. So to say I was a little bit obsessed would have been an understatement at some stage, which is unhealthy in itself. So, I've found a little bit more balance.
When you say you lost your health, did something happen, or were you fighting disease?
So I think it was 2005 or 2006. I was at the football, and I was watching the football, and someone ran up and king hit me and knocked my 4 front teeth out, knocked me unconscious. I rolled down 4 or 5 flights of stairs. I woke up with someone sort of punching and attacking me, and I could taste the blood, and my teeth went backwards in my mouth. It was quite. It's probably the worst thing that ever happened to me, Vicky.
Wow.
And I learned a lot from that. And sent me in a direction. I probably wouldn't be here right now talking to you if that didn't happen, because it changed the whole direction of my life. And I met different people from it, and in a strange way, you learn and become grateful for everything in your life. And even this thing that is one of the worst things that ever happened to me,
I'm grateful for it.
I had to use it and learn from it.
Turn it into a positive, exactly.
Turn it into a positive. So for me, I lost my health. I was sort of post-traumatic stress disorder. I was depressed. I had dermatitis. I used to scratch myself till I bled. I had all these problems that I'd never had before post the assault. And it was, there was a whole lot of learning, which I guess I'm been banging on about all podcast, a whole lot of learning that I've gone through since then. And, I value my health from that. And I think it's when you lose something that you put a little bit more value on it. So, that's why, some of my friends know me as a little bit quirky and a little bit of a pain in the arse. And I've been banging on about being gluten-free and stuff since before it was cool.
You sound like me.
I remember back in the day I used to drink coconut, and, people used to look at me like I had 2 friggin' heads. And now you can buy coconut water everywhere.
You set the trend, Dean.
If only I monetarised some of these things, it would be... But,
well ahead of the curve. Amazing.
We could start a group.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as a longevity plan, then, is there something that you do daily? Is it obviously the exercise and your diet and the mindfulness and all of that? Is there anything else that let's go to your top 3 tips then. What are your top 3 tips to promote longevity? We touched on it before. What you put in your mouth is probably one of the greatest ways you can influence your health. Yes.
Eating whole foods slowly and mindfully. Being grateful, and sort of finding what you love to do.
Yes.
Again, it's been another big one for me.
Finding something you're passionate about.
What else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, they're important things, aren't they? You see so many people go through the motions of just doing a job and not feeling fulfilled, and it's soul draining. It's just, it's not fulfilling in any way. And
so I guess finally, in terms of working with other people or trying to help people, don't be afraid to get help.
Yes.
Because, the best, world number 1 tennis player, best golfers in the world, they all have coaches.
Yes.
I sort of, when I'm coaching someone or trying to help someone, it's not always the breathing that helps them, but it may be their diet. So I'm looking for that low piece of hanging fruit. I'm looking for the easy option where I can, it may be their sleep pattern. They might be up to midnight watching Netflix, but they might be eating really well and training like a boss. And it's like, well, hang on, let's go to bed 2 hours earlier and see what happens.
Yeah.
And hey, all of a sudden things start to improve. They start to lose weight. They start to feel better. So it's looking for simplicity in their life, which
Absolutely.
may be breathing better, it may be eating better, maybe drinking more water, it may be
And it's not that hard,
cooking
is
more
it?
food.
It's not hard to make those
Well,
changes.
it isn't. It's, you know, buying health food, I bet you know it's expensive,
Yeah.
and buying takeaway food is cheap. So
Yes.
and then you've got to go home and cook it. And then the part that I dislike is cleaning up.
Yeah.
I don't mind shopping and cooking. It's just cleaning up.
Yeah.
Just,
You're not alone there, I'm sure.
But if you've, been at work all day, sort of, trying to get that fresh veg from the farmers markets and
Yeah.
Grass-fed animal, meat. And
Well, I guess it's just doing what you can when you can, however you can. Really,
I think it overwhelms people. So, I guess baby steps, doing a little bit here and a little bit there is where you need to start.
Absolutely.
And be grateful that you're on the journey.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful chatting to you, Dean. Thank you for enlightening us about the power of the breath. And I do really miss yoga. So it's you've actually inspired me to get back to even just pranayama on a daily basis for myself. So thank you so much.
Yeah, a little bit of breathing and a little bit of home practice. We've all got 15 minutes. Couple of salutes would be amazing.
Yes, exactly. We all need it. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
My absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow me on our YouTube channel, One Body, One Life, to see more inspirational videos to help you reach optimal wellness and longevity. But until next time, don't forget, you've got to nourish to flourish.